facilities plan discussion. For the sake of the workshop, we'll do a roll call for who's on the call. Councilmember Foyer.
Here.
Councilmember Kurtz.
Here.
Councilmember Sievers. You're on mute. Todd, can you unmute Hughes' phone?
Yeah, working on it right now.
Mayor Pro Tem Kennedy.
Present.
Okay. Let's get started on the capital facilities plan discussion.
So Mayor, I have a few just opening remarks just to kind of establish what we hope to accomplish tonight and some revisions that we have in this. I wonder if Todd or Ann can load the PowerPoint presentation, please. What? No, that's not the right one. That is not the right one. Can you share the screen with me? I can load it. All right, give me 1 second. I've got a single screen here, so it takes a little effort. Can you guys see this? Can you guys see my screen?
No.
No.
All right,
No.
hold on 1 second. Can you see it now?
Nope.
No.
Okay.
Lisa, the email that you sent to us that Todd pulled up had a lot of slides in it.
That was not
Can
the
you tell
one.
us-
That was not the
Okay.
one. So hold on 1 second. We got it here. Got it.
There you go.
All right, so basically, so sorry about the technical difficulties. It's been a crazy day. So I just wanted to kind of tee off the conversation to let you know from a staff perspective, what we hope to accomplish with this workshop is we want to be available to answer your questions and get your feedback. We also want to hear about your suggested changes to the capital facilities plan. And what we'd like to do at the close of the workshop is to summarize what we as staff heard, and I'll kick it off and Katie will chime in. And then we'd like to ask council to confirm what you're recommending as proposed changes to this so that we can incorporate those into the 2020 as well as addressing the capital, addressing it in the capital facilities. And so I want to pause for just 1 second, a couple points of clarification. I want to let you know that we're going to have a couple future revisions. I didn't make any changes to this because what I set out this afternoon, because we don't want to cloud the issue. But I will let you know that we have changes to the 2 signal projects that are going to be constructed in 2021. So the Ridgeline High School signal, we now have you have actually in your packet tonight, the award of the bid. And so we want to revise that cost to $385,000. It was originally $460,000 was the engineer's estimate. But on the Legacy Ridge Country Vista signal, we'd like to increase that to $480,000 based upon the engineer's cost estimate. And we know material prices are going up, et cetera. Again, because we won't be bidding it until later in the year, there's a lot of volatility with metals in particular. So anyhow, so we've got, that's what we will be proposing as revisions in the next generation of the capital facilities plan from a staff perspective. The other thing is that I wanted to point out to you that the working draft assumes deferral of the police department's generator to 2021. But Ben is with us, and he's going to provide us with a quick update on that. And then you as council can let us know what you want to do, if you want us to proceed this year or whether you want to, again, defer it to 2020. That's really all I wanted to say, other than to turn it over to Ben to give a quick update on the status of the asset management projects at the police department. Ben, can you jump in here?
Yes, thank you, Lisa. So at request of council, I went and got the bids or the quotes for the HVAC and the lighting system as kind of the first part of the project. And currently those come back, the low bid was $40,500. And I know that that was deferred till 2021. But now that we've got those quotes back, I think that we can move forward if we would like to move forward on those. And then the second part of that is the generator, and the engineer's estimate for that was $87,000 approximately. And it came to light this week that we may potentially be having a donation that may be coming through. I'm not sure exactly what that amount is, but some local folks that would really like to help the city out with that project. So once we get what they would like to donate, I can update with that, but that's the approximate cost for the generator and then the HVAC and lighting. So if I may get a little bit of direction on how we would like to proceed, first with the HVAC and lighting portion of that, I would be happy to bring that to council as well, or I have those quotes. The good thing was when we got the engineer to put together the pricing and kind of establish a baseline, the quotes are within $300 of each other. So I thought that was really good. Yes, sir.
Ben, you quoted what, 40-some thousand for the heating, air conditioning, and the lighting?
I apologize. Yes, $40,500.
Okay, I might be mistaken. I don't have it in my notes. I thought the dollar amount for the heating and air conditioning was even higher than that to begin with.
For the original estimate?
Yes.
Yeah. So the engineer quote, they kind of put some stuff together. They had estimated approximately $30,000 just for the HVAC, and it came in, or just for the HVAC portion, connecting all the piping and ductwork and stuff, and that was around $33,000, and then the lights were approximately $7,000 of that.
Okay, so it's 30-some thousand for 2 of the HVAC systems.
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hey, question, Ben. This is Dan. The HVAC and lighting portion, remind me, is that on our what we track as asset utilization and depreciation? Is that item on our list relevant to this coming year?
For 2021, correctly. So that's on the. That was what we expected.
Yeah.
Out.
So in the 2020 to 2025 capital facilities plan, and in the budget, we had the money in 2020's 2020 for those improvements. But again, because of the delays we've had in implementing that and the kind of controversy around it, we made the assumption in the working draft of the capital facility plan for 2021 that we would be deferring the generator until 2021. Again, that can be updated and revised. Again, that was our assumption at the time we drafted this.
Yeah, I recognize the planning portion of that, whether it's asserted in our cap plan. What I'm wondering more was, we have a software, I guess, a solution which tracks the capital assets of the city and recognizes their depreciation and eventual, retirement and upgrade. And was this one in those? And I'm trying to remember if that was in that group.
Yes, it was in the 2020.
Okay.
Yes.
And then the same, I guess, question reflected on what the police department generator. Was that one also on those asset tracking functions that we say we'd like to see, that tells us we're supposed to replace it?
Yes.
And the generator is actually a higher priority than the HVAC units because the HVAC units are still functioning.
Yep. Last one, I'm going to recount my perception of current state on our backup power system, that there's been some amount of testing demonstrating some amount of capability, but there's not a lot of certainty or comfort, I guess, in a total amount of time that backup system would run. I think that's my knowledge of our current state.
Yes, and I know the police department has been coordinating a lot of that testing that's been going on with it, so they could comment on better the exact testing requirements. But yes, I think that's probably accurate.
Gotcha. So we're still in a kind of an uncertain position regarding backup power and being able to run the police department in the event of a power emergency.
Correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Pro Tem Kennedy.
I have a question on the generator. I know when we ran the tests, or as much tests they could on the solar system, that maybe at the best scenario could last 3 days, 1 to 2 or something like that. But that's an assumption, I assume, if there's no sun, if they're not able to recharge themselves. So common sense would say if they're able to recharge themselves, they could last for a lot longer. Correct?
Potentially. I think when they do those tests, they assume an average across the different seasons, but I can follow up and get you a specific answer to what that test actually means. I don't think they just tested during a peak time for sun and then base the assumptions on that. I think it's a test based on an average of if there's sun or not sun.
Well, my concern has been is that if we don't have the backup generator, and if the solar system is not working, then we're down over there. But the assumption is, once again, if it was only good for a couple of days, that assumption has to be in common sense. Is this based on if we think they're not going to recharge themselves?
Yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, but I think we do have some certainty that those max life of holding that power, it was up to 3 days though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And it's a trickle charge system, so they don't completely drain. As it's draining, it can still essentially top itself off with a little bit of sunlight. So you're essentially keeping that 3 days in reserve
Right.
that entire time. But it's if you were to go into an emergency state, drain it all down and recharge it back, that it would be far more dependent on the solar system having complete power there, like you're saying. But I don't think that the probability of that instance is as big of a concern, because you would have to lose power completely for those 3 days and then go back into that cycle again.
And my second question was with the generator, is that the generator apparently would be a backup to the solar system. Because if power goes out, solar system kicks in, the generator is a backup to that, or solar system replaced, gone completely. We go strictly to generator.
Well, I think it's based on whatever's the most efficient system to use at a time. So if we need to recharge those batteries, and if there's battery capacity available, we can go to the battery system. And that's the best one to use. And if that's not able to be reserved, we can switch quickly to the generator system as well.
Recall that Chief had also mentioned that there were only certain rooms that those were supporting. And so the generator would be required to help support those other rooms.
They're not apples to apples.
Right.
The solar panel runs the kitchen, the chief's office, I believe the administrative office, and that's pretty much it. It does not run the entire facility. The generator is signed to run the entire facility, is that correct, Ben?
Yeah, the generator would run everything. It's the same principle you use when doing design for entire cities, is you have a backup that, you know, a city like Avista has a backup capacity to be able to meet that peak demand. And that's basically what we're doing on a microscopic scale, is we're using the solar as much as we can, you know, to set up the battery system, but the generator covers the entirety all the time if there were ever to be an instance, the entire operation.
Pro Tem Kennedy?
Yeah, if the solar system goes down, I assume the generator, if it's a backup, will kick in automatically. And if it does, that will also charge the batteries as the generator is running. Is that a correct assumption?
It can, yes. You can equip them with automatic throwovers is what it's called.
Right.
Will
Yeah.
trigger after a certain point.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilmember Dunn?
So point to the objective of staff regarding that cap facilities discussion. I would want to see the generator portion of this put into the upcoming 2021 year capital facility. That is my suggestion.
Councilmember Foyer?
Thank you. We already budgeted for this project, correct?
Yes.
What was that number?
RJ?
Do you know the number? The number for the generator that we budgeted?
For the whole project, for all of it?
The whole project. So give me a couple seconds. I'll bring it up.
RJ's gonna find the number and let you know what it is. I
Wasn't
thought
it-
it was in the $100,000 range, but we'll confirm.
Yeah.
I thought it was around 130 or something like that.
137, I believe.
It was 147 for the generator alone.
147, that didn't include the rooftops or the lighting.
Correct.
I thought it was 170 some odd thousand total.
Okay, perfect. I love your numbers. Keep going up. Love it. So here's my thought.
I'll bid 200,000. Okay.
The original quote that we got was $248,251. What I'm hearing you say is that we're able to pull it all off, HVAC units, lighting, and the generator for $127,500 plus tax.
Number you just quoted.
Is that correct?
One.
So we still haven't gotten specific bidded quotes.
RJ has the number.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm multitasking. I was listening to the conversation and trying to figure out the numbers.
And just remember, Phil, the numbers that we were using before and the numbers we're using now are different scopes, okay? The other was a performance-based contract that we were gonna pay for what actually got done. This is a very specific scope of services with a deliverable that would be either received from a competitive quote or from on-call contract. So
Well,
the
what-
difference is, and then there's also, the other contract included inspection, it included fees that would go to the state of Washington, and it included design costs.
I understand. I'm looking at it. Yeah. So
Okay.
Mike, but I thought I just heard Ben say 87 for the generator and 40,005 for the rooftops and the lighting.
So if I may, in the budget and the capital improvement plan, we have 90,000 a year that is just basic maintenance for the library and the PD. We had an additional 147,700 that was intended to be for the package of the generator and the HVAC.
So can we do all of it for 127.5 plus sales tax?
Second.
We don't know until we bid it. We have estimates, but we don't have bids.
Yes. So the current ones that we do have bids for are for the replacing the 2 rooftop units and doing the lighting, and that's that 40,500. So that leaves us roughly 87,000 for the generator cost. And based on the Amoresco cost estimate, that's what they had estimated for the engineer's opinion of probable cost. So in theory, we would be able to do that, especially once I find out if this donation materializes and what options we have there. That would give us a little bit more buffer. So what I'm really wanting to do is just understand, should I go ahead and get the quotes for the generator now to solidify if that $87,000 amount is the correct one? Because now we have the HVAC and the lighting numbers.
Sorry, I misunderstood. I thought your number for the generator was an estimate, so I apologize.
Yeah, the number for the generator is an estimate. You're correct.
From some company.
Yes, that was from their engineers. That was from the Amoresco number. Sorry, Katie.
So just for the purposes of clarity, didn't the task order that Parametrics have give you an engineer's estimate for the generator?
It was for the HVAC and lighting portion of that. Because I know we wanted to break out the HVAC and lighting from the generator cost.
So the number, the 87,000 you got for the generator installation, is that an engineer's estimate?
That is, and that was based off the original Amoresco quote, which it had everything. It had the HVAC, the lighting, the windows, the full quote, but looking at that specific number, I broke that out. So that is an engineer's estimate.
So Phil, in order for us to tell you exactly what it's going to cost, Ben's going to have to bid it and get bid proposals, and then we can bring back that number. So I think what he's asking is, does the council want us to move forward with bidding that work? And then I'm going to add, Ben, we also have inspection, and I don't know the inspection cost, and then also a contingency. So this is just the raw cost for the construction, doesn't include the project management, inspection, and the contingency. But if you want us to bid it, so tonight, you don't have to decide that you want to do it or not. You can just tell us you want us to move forward in getting a bid. That's kind of the difference. So we're not asking for a firm commitment. We're just asking, do you want us to move forward with bidding this work? Is that correct, Ben?
Correct.
So if I can, so the 40,005, that's all in, or there's more on top of that?
That's all in
Okay,
for
so
the HVAC and lighting portion.
even if I use our budget number of 147, pull out the 40,005, that still leaves me with 106.5 for a generator. And you're saying we already got a quote from Amoresco of 87, plus there's some management and some other stuff, sure. So I guess I would be in favor of just going for it all right now, as long as we stay within our budgeted amount. If you can get a quote to keep us under budget.
Pro Tem Kennedy.
I agree with that. I have to think back. The reason this thing kept getting kicked down the road is that because of the solar system, that it was inadequate, it didn't work, we couldn't get parts, things that sort there. So I understand the possibility of taking the generator into next year. I would be absolutely in favor, if this is within our budget, to let's start moving ahead on it. We get the bid, if it's acceptable, we move ahead and get it done now. We're going into the winter. If anything is ever going to happen to us, it's going to be in the winter. It's not going to be in the summer. It's very unlikely. And have the opportunity to move ahead. The only question I have is for confirmation in my mind is that this is not replacing the solar system. This is an addition to the solar system.
Correct.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other council questions? Councilmember Kurtz.
I'm in favor of going forward with getting the bids. I think the questions I had were around the project management piece of it, if that's something that you would be able to manage, or if we're going to have to get a scope of work for that as well. Because that was one of the big costs, and I think the big detractors for some of us in the discussion with the Amoresco quote was how much of it was just going to the project management piece of it, or at least it was for me.
Yeah, so I'm happy to look through the exact scope of work again in detail with the Amoresco quote and see if there's any other things that I feel like we need to make sure that we're getting an apples to apples comparison. We had really good success with that with the HVAC and lighting. I mean, I was really impressed with how close those quotes were because we clarified it so much. So I'll double check that and see. As far as the management, the project management of the installation, I feel comfortable doing that, certainly. I just want to make sure that when we're getting the quotes, that we have enough information from the Amoresco report to get the same level of quality comparison that we did for the HVAC and lighting portion of that.
Thank you.
Any other council comments? Mayor Pro Tem Kennedy?
One additional question. I know when we were talking about the size of this generator, that was it a minimum recommended size? Because I know the question came up, and I believe Councilman Follier put some research into this. The cost difference of getting to a larger generator is not that expensive. So I think we should take in consideration is that what are the size we're getting? Is that a bare minimum? And what would the cost difference be of going up to the next stage? Because if it's not that much and we have it within the budget, I think it makes sense to move up to a better or a bigger capacity generator.
So the way we can set up the bid proposal for that is to list what that bare minimum bid price would be, and then go to the next stage up and say, if you can quote both prices, we'd appreciate that. And then that gives all of you a better information to choose what that cost difference is and if it's worth moving forward with that.
Excellent, thank you.
And just one other point of clarification too, we did the same thing with the HVAC and lighting portion of that. And I did have them put in an alternate to say if we wanted to reuse, because that $40,500 amount is to replace those fixtures completely. But we also have the option of deducting a little bit out. I think it's roughly $2,000 or so to just utilize and retrofit the existing lighting. So we can set up the generator quote in the same way to make sure those concerns are being addressed. Because I agree with you, it's better if we can go up a little bit more and get more capacity in the future.
Member Foyer?
Are we, the estimates you've received for the rooftops and the lighting, is that something you can move forward on right away?
Yes, I can, absolutely. We're ready to go on those if you'd like us to move forward.
So can we make a decision right now to let them go forward with that portion of the project?
We would need to bring it to the regular council meeting for you guys to officially vote on.
All right, I'll bring it up at our regular council meeting. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, Lisa?
So again, really, we are here to hear council's questions and their input on the draft capital facilities plan. So I really want to turn it over to council to see what their thoughts and concerns are.
Yeah, at the last council meeting, we talked about this and asked that you guys have a chance to look at it and see any thoughts or concerns. I know there are some that were brought up. So this is a good opportunity as we're going to be starting to roll out our budget pretty soon here. Mayor Pro Tem Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I only have two or more. They're just a question. I realize that a lot of this is being just rolled over from 2020 to 2021 because of COVID and stuff, and I understand that, and I don't have a challenge with that. The only two concerns that I had was one on Trailhead facility, and the other one is the library, because we had it in our budget for preventive maintenance, the lack of calling anything else. So the concern always is the longer we don't do something to these facilities, we've already identified things that have to be done. So it's up in the air what's going to happen with that. So I guess the question would be, are we going to be in a position with both these facilities that we're going to need to do something, say Trailhead, for example, regardless if we're going to replace it or not, which kind of is a given, is there some preventative maintenance we're going to have to spend money on just because of the age
Jen?
answer is yes.
Yeah.
That's a very good question. So in front of me, I have a very detailed list of items going back to 2019, when the original assessments were done from the engineers to put the data into the software. And it's a lot of data, so I'm not going to go through that detail by detail. There are some items dating back to 2019. There are some items from 2020. There are projected items in 21 that need to be done. With that being said, the recommendation would be to prioritize these items. Just because the software lists, you know, walls need to be painted or doors need to be replaced doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to be done. There are some items on here that we could sit down and go through and say, are these critical items? Are they not? You know, we felt like the solar system / generator backup power was a pretty critical item, which was why there was such focus on it over this last year. The HVAC, again, another highly recommended item from city staff to get that done before we have any failure, and trying to be proactive. So with that being said, yes, we have deferred items dating back to 2019, and I have that list in front of me. But the items that have been set before you were the priorities that staff is recommending we focus on. You know, I guess if you want to say as critical items, whereas some of these other items, yes, they've been deferred, but they can be deferred, and we should probably prioritize elsewhere with things like the generator and the HVAC. So going forward, of course, I had a good conversation with Katie today that, you know, each year we defer means it piles up a little bit more. But with that being said too, I think it's really important that we as staff continue prioritizing what needs to be done, and also being prepared for things that do fail, that are unexpected, which I believe RJ can confirm. We do have that building contingency fund if something does fail that we didn't count on. So between the building contingency fund and prioritizing off this list what's really important and critical and what can wait, we've kind of done that already with you, and the focus again was the HVAC and the generator for sure.
Jim, kind of
If I may,
hang on.
just for clarification. So we do have $90,000 in addition to what was being rolled over for the generator. We do have $90,000 in the 2021 budget for the library. Not for Trailhead. We have, that is up in the air, but for the library that has been addressed.
Jen, do we have a kind of a top 5 or 4 items for Trailhead specifically?
No, we put Trailhead aside at the time last year because we were working on the master plan. So I have quite an extensive list from 2019, dating back to 2019. But I would have to go through it with other staff to determine priorities on that list. We had paused at the time because the focus at that time was the master plan.
Jen, quick question. How many dollars do we have proposed in 2021 for maintenance of Trailhead amenities?
I'm gonna have to get that number for you. Give me a few minutes and I'll find that for you.
I have it on my desk, I can go get it. So
Yeah.
basically what she, each facility, City Hall, Police Department, Library, Trailhead, Park, she's identified a certain amount of dollars that we would be using for maintenance. Certainly there'd have to be some flexibility in there if something else were to happen, but basically she's identified a certain dollar amount for all of our facilities that we were planning to put into the 2021 budget.
So I think Lisa sent out an asset management plan earlier today, and in that plan there is a small Excel spreadsheet that identifies the costs dating back to 2019 for each of the facilities, and those costs are based on the asset management software recommendations. Now the 50,000 and the 90,000, there was 50,000 we budgeted last year for City Hall and 90,000 for PD Library facility maintenance. Those are based on a funding strategy. If you recall, I reviewed those funding strategies with you to basically maintain our facilities in a good operating condition over the next 30 years. Those two graphs are also in that document, so you can look at those. But the idea isn't to go and do every single item every year on that list. It's just this little spreadsheet is just to give you an idea of the full meal deal of what is being recommended to be done. But then it's up to staff to look at it. Yeah, that's it, Katie. It's up to staff to determine what is a priority, what can wait, because realistically, we really can't do every single item every year, and really no municipality is able to do that. So again, we've prioritized.
So if I could summarize real quickly, I think Mayor Pro Tem Kennedy, your question was, Trailhead Golf Course, what maintenance do we have planned for next year? And so looking at the main building, we don't have anything planned for the main building or for the golf course next year, because we're waiting for the decision on what we were going to do with Trailhead. However, if we don't do anything with Trailhead, we have approximately $10,000 planned in 2022, and approximately $20,000 planned in 2023, and approximately $108,000 planned in 2025. And she's done this for every facility, and kind of what she's done is try to equalize the amount of dollars spent every year, so that as we maintain our facilities, we always are efficient and we aren't deferring costly items. So there's some flexibility in there, but there is dollars set aside. Specifically, Trailhead doesn't have anything identified for 2021 though, Jen.
Right, because there wasn't anything due in 21. Per the asset software, there wasn't anything recommended to be done in 21. But if you look at 19, there was quite a bit that needed to be caught up in 19 that we weren't, again, planning on doing, and we hadn't budgeted for, because the software came into play about 3/4 of the way through that already budgeted year.
Mayor Pro Tem Kennedy.
When we got that software, Jen, I think it was absolutely outstanding. I believe that was well-spent money. It's going to assist us well as we move forward. I know that I do recall that list. It'd be nice to get access to that again. I know I've got it somewhere in my files, but who knows how I could ever find it. But I do remember there were some things on there that were recommended, but because we were looking at replacing the building or doing something with it, it didn't really make sense to put a lot of money into it. One of the items came up was, you recall, we decided to replace the hot water heater. And one of the questions was, well, if we replace that, can we utilize that when we do a remodel? And that really wasn't a concern, so it was kind of put to the side. What I do remember is some of the preventive maintenance was cosmetic that could be done. Point bathrooms. What was talked about is that there's one bare light hanging in that bathroom. And at one point it was discussed, I don't remember what the dollar amounts were, what would it cost to repaint that bathroom, fix the lighting in there, the entryway to the facility, because it's all dark wood, and that would get us through cosmetically until we make our next move. So that's something I think we ought to take into consideration.
Mayor, or Councilmember Foyer.
Jen, thank you for bringing up prioritizing. That was one of my topics of discussion for the spreadsheet that I'm looking at. For 2019, it gives project numbers 1 through 19, and several of them have to be determined behind them as far as a cost. So I'm wondering how difficult it would be. I'm not trying to make more work for somebody, but is there any way we can prioritize that list with the items that we want to pay close attention to at the top, and the items that need more discussion, the to be determines, at the bottom of the list? Because sometimes I feel when I look through this, you got to zoom in on it on a big computer screen to see it because the spreadsheet's so big. But sometimes I feel like I look over things. If I don't look at the number that's budgeted, it doesn't draw. I go back and I have to look at what was the item, how much is it. It'd be nice if we could just have it all focused on the top half of that chart. And then my second question is, some of these topics that are on here, this is established in 2018, correct?
Yes, so, yes, and for the TBD list there, some of them we do have cost estimates for, but they were not funded either in 2019 or in 2020. Or they weren't, the council did not choose to act on them. And again, some of them were items that were mentioned at city council, but again, there was no decision to act on them, and for us to be able to come up with dollar amounts, things like a dog park would need to be master planned and whatnot. So,
which leads right into my next question. At some point here, I feel like we should go back and revisit some of those and see if they are still a high priority or if they're even in the horizon. And if they're not, let's take them off the list.
right, and may I just say that they were not necessarily priorities or high priorities, they were just projects that were mentioned, and council never decided to take them off the list, which is why they're still on there.
So can we have that discussion now, or does it have to be for another time?
It absolutely can be now.
Yeah, that was kind of the part of the intent of this.
Perfect. Can I continue?
Go for it.
Awesome. Some of these things on this list, I'm not familiar with what they consist of, and I'm not looking for a super long explanation of what it is. But for example, the Rocky Hill Park shade structure, lot expansion, splash pad. I don't have a lot of history on those, so I don't want to make a snap judgment on whether we need those or not. And maybe at a future, maybe now you can quickly address it, but are those necessary? Are those wants of the city? Are those requests by our citizens? How did they get on the list? I guess I wasn't part of that discussion.
What I can say, and I think that probably others can jump on from the council, but some of them were projects that had previously been funded, things like the splash pad. After the challenges that we had working with the health district at Orchard Park, it was determined that it would make more sense to do something like provide a shade structure. But again, that wasn't really decided as a final decision, so it was left on there as basically a placeholder. Other projects were things that had been mentioned either at a council meeting or by a council member, and so again we put them on the list for council to decide whether or not they were something that they wanted to include in, and no funding was ever assigned to them by council. Yeah.
Lisa, so just, I know that some of the council members that have been on in the position for a lot of time, Hugh and Dan, we did a parks master plan when Amanda was here. I don't remember the year. I want to say it was 2016, 2017. She did a very extensive public engagement, and during that park master plan discussion, they had focus groups out in the community, and those focus groups identified wants, things that they would like in different parks, and it materialized into a park master plan. There was volleyball, there was splash pads, there was shade structures, there was parking. Mayor, you probably recall that work effort as well. And so it all went into a parks master plan, and so that's how it ended up on the list. They are not must-haves, they are things that the community requested during the parks master plan effort.
Councilmember Dunn.
Hey, Lisa, I seem to remember as a great exercise, a matrix-based approach to prioritization, which in individual response, each council member was asked to try and say one or the other, and it resulted in a scoring effect.
Yes.
Can you recall that action?
Yes, absolutely. And it's a great exercise if that's something the council would like to go through. We could easily do that with this list of projects.
Yeah, for me, I observed that I was asked previously to perform that kind of a prioritization activity. And I think that what we're looking at reflects to some degree that. I'd love to go look at the data, but I think that's what that does.
Councilmember Kurtz.
That's what I was going to suggest as well. I think what would be helpful is having a copy of the master plan that you were talking about for the parks to consider. And just, I know that down below in the capital facilities plan, there were some descriptions of the projects. So that we could maybe by the next meeting have that prioritization done. I don't know if that's too quick, but I know we also want to have the budget piece done. So, but there are some things on here, if they're TBD and we haven't assigned any dollar figure to them, I think that there are some needs that we have and some investments that we've made that we want to follow through on, at least from my perspective, where some of these other things, we don't have a plan for them yet. And unless we're going to invest some time in making a plan, I think we should focus on things like Trailhead that we have invested money in and move forward on that.
Any other comments? Mayor Pro Tem Kennedy?
I'd recommend that the council members look at this list, make their own things that they feel should be looked at to either add, keep them, or delete them. Give that to Lisa as soon as possible, and we can come up with Dan's suggestion from there, which I think is a good suggestion. We just don't have the time in the next 12 minutes to get into individual if we should discuss the dog park or anything else. So I think something like that would be very productive for us. Just for everybody's memory, how we came about with some of these, such as the kiosk and the dog park and community messaging board, is that each council member was asked to come up with any recommendations that they would like to recommend that we look at doing either now or sometime in the future. So that's where a lot of this came from.
So maybe we need part of our facilities plan is a section that pertains to upcoming projects for consideration or some other term. I would just like to see it out of our short-term plan.
So we absolutely could do that. If you decide that any or all of those you don't want here, we could have in transportation planning, there's a list of illustrative projects that don't make the cut for the 6-year funding that is still put on kind of like in a holding pattern as the wish list for future projects. What I think I heard, and please, so a couple things. So you want to see a copy of the master plan for parks. You want to see a copy of the previous prioritization, and you want me to prepare a prioritization matrix for just the TBD projects or for all of the projects? For you guys to then go through the prioritization exercise. I'm not clear which it is.
Can I make one more comment related to that, Lisa? When I look at the matrix and I see a number behind kiosk, for example, I think to myself, how do we pay for that? It's like somebody said earlier, it's not that we're committed to doing it, it's a placeholder. So right. For me, I'd like all those placeholders out of our we're serious about doing these projects. Right. And placeholder items should be in a different subcategory by itself. And how we get there, I'm game to whatever.
Mayor Pro Tem Kennedy.
Big title is it to be determined.
Councilmember Dunn.
I guess as a contrasting perspective, I think it's important to have visibility to what we think we'd like to accomplish 5 and even on a 10-year event horizon. Having visibility to the magnitude of those actions, as well as when we think even in a stretch of the imagination they could be accomplished, I think is an important part of planning, and that's what this exercise is. So, thanks.
Councilmember Kurtz.
Lisa, you mentioned whether we wanted to have a like a prioritization sheet for all of this, and I guess for me, I don't want to prioritize because this is like 5 pages long. I don't want to have to prioritize the, I don't know, what, 150 some items that are on here. Right. I think what I'm interested in trying to prioritize are, and perhaps it's even by the title, like Parks and Public Facilities Capital Projects. Does that make sense? Prioritized by each area? Because for me, when I'm looking at fleet equipment and asset management, I don't know. I think that's just, for me, it's like whatever time schedule we should be on. But for me, it's like the bigger investments, like, that very first category, or parks and public facilities asset management.
And that's kind of how we did it last time in 2018 when we were originally kind of putting together the capital facilities plan.
Right.
We did it by categories. And we didn't really include asset management pieces. The asset management pieces are more about maintaining the
Yes.
investments that you've already made. And so that asset management piece is the piece that Jen has done with her software. So it does make sense that you focus on new investments, not in maintaining.
Right.
I can absolutely do that, and I can get that out to you probably by the end of the week, a prioritization matrix for you guys to go through with each of these, with each of the capital projects.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Mayor Pro Tem Kennedy?
If I can go back to originally, if we're through in that particular areas, Lisa, you were asking us to look at this and make recommendations of things we feel that we move forward on or eliminate or whatever the case may be. Is that correct? Looking for a
Yeah, so I can set up the matrix in a way that you can do a not applicable if you think that something should be removed from the list.
Okay. I'm referring back to the list that you supplied to us that we're making comments on originally, like treadmill facility, public works yard, things of the sort.
Yes.
Okay. The only one that really jumped out at me on here is when I read through all of these, they're generally either postponed because of COVID, whatever reason, into the next year or something like that, or funding or concerns, things of that sort. The one thing that I see is that absolutely recommended, almost at the top of the list, is public art. Funding proposal is recommended by the Parks and Art Commission in their 2020 plan. If we're in a position or have been in a position that we're having to postpone things or hiring additional employees because of the uncertainty of funding on it, I think we have to be realistic on what do we not do. And if suddenly that is a recommendation, so some of this I think we can get into when we look at the 2021 budget. But I think we have to use common sense here. Is that a priority item?
I think that's a good point, and I do want to mention, as I said at our last workshop, that item reflects what they proposed last year, and I know that they were proposing a new budget number. I don't know, Jen, do you have that? What the Parks and Arts Commission was requesting for this year?
Yes. Yeah, 24,500 for their projects, and we will have that number finalized by Friday. But that was what they voted and agreed on yesterday in the meeting.
24,500 is what you said?
Correct.
Thank you.
That's why I bring that up, that possibly maybe that shouldn't be on this list, because we're obviously going to have a discussion when we start looking at the budget for 2021.
So the reason why it's on this list is because it is, when you invest in art, it is a capital investment. Anything on this capital facilities plan for 2021 is also reflected in the budget. And so changes that you make in the budget for 2021 will, for any of these projects, will then be updated in the final capital facilities plan that we bring forward to you to adopt.
Correct. Thank you.
Katie? Katie, yeah. Go ahead, Kate.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I just want to take a minute and summarize the notes I took to make sure that I captured everyone's feedback and comments. So on the police department facility, Ben is going to move forward with the HVAC and lights within our budget, current budget in 2020. and we would bring back a contract for you to award. On the generator, we're gonna go out and get bids and then bring that back for the council to award within budget. On the Parks Master Plan, Councilmember Kurtz asked that we send you all a copy of the Parks Master Plan. That is what we have on file. And then we also are looking at a short-term plan where Councilmember Foyer is wanting us to separate kind of the short-term priority projects from the to-be-determined projects. The placeholders is, I think, the term you use. Separate those into two different lists. And then I also heard, let's see, I think, on the Ridgeline and the Legacy traffic signals that Lisa kicked us off with, there's some minor modifications that we want to make there as well. So based on that, did I forget anything, Lisa?
So a couple on Parks and Arts Commission, we're, the 24/5, council wants me to prepare a prioritization matrix so they can go through the same exercise that we did in 2018. And I think what I heard, and Mayor Pro Tem Kennedy, please correct me if I'm wrong. What I heard, what I gleaned from the conversation is that you want to see some prioritization. We're not reflecting it in the capital facilities plan now, but we should prioritize some of the maintenance from Trailhead. We do have that prioritization already for the library in there, but we haven't, but we need to.
My concern was Trailhead and, you know, the existing two main buildings we have, Trailhead and the library.
So we'll need Jen to advise us on revisions to the Trailhead asset management.
Okay.
Councilmember Kurtz.
For the prioritization, if you're talking about doing like a not applicable, can there be a comment section in that so we can say why we would take something off? I think the context would probably be helpful for you.
Absolutely.
Mayor Pro Tem Kennedy.
Yeah, I don't, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I don't know if we have time to answer this. So if possible, we could probably transfer this question into our 7 o'clock. But I notice on, under Trails, Pedestrians, Pathways, the annual pedestrian crossing allocation. I know that we've done a lot of research on that. I believe I've been told that I think we have a final on that for the 5 locations. But then I also look at the page 3 of 4 under investment summary, and we have number 31, pedestrian crossing mission and bidder route, design at 50%, deferred due to COVID. So are we in a position where we have, is the investigation done? Do we have some results? Where are we with those 5 sites?
We do. We have engineers' cost estimates for all of them, and Ben has now the engineers' cost estimates are just for the construction, and we have to add in the materials, and Ben has gone through and done that. He's also gone through, and what he's done is he's taken the policy that you City Council created and developed a matrix to plug in the evaluation of those criteria. And so we can absolutely send that out to all of you if you would like.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'm going to give us a 2-minute break before we start our regular meeting. So if anyone needs to take a break for a second, go ahead. And we'll just all stay on so we don't have to log back in.